There's been a lot of discussion recently regarding the newly released Donkey Kong game for the Switch 2, Donkey Kong Bananza, and where it fits in the Mario and Donkey Kong timeline. This is due to the presence of Pauline, who is depicted as a teenage girl, which is much younger than all of her other depictions throughout the Mario and Donkey Kong timeline. This has led several people to make many different assumptions about its placement in the Mario and Donkey Kong timeline. This video will discuss the placement of Donkey Kong Bananza in the context of the Super Mario Universe timeline. Watching this video without having any context on what the Super Mario Universe timeline is could lead to some confusion. If further details and clarification are required, the Super Mario Universe timeline video can be reviewed. The link is in the description. Before discussing Donkey Kong Bananza, a quick review of pertinent events from the Super Mario Universe timeline will be given. One small note that will be reiterated is that the Super Mario Universe timeline doesn't consider supplemental canon such as developer interviews as canon. It only considers what is shown in-game as well as accompanying instruction manuals. This means that Shigeru Miyamoto's statement on Mario's age is non-canon in the context of the Super Mario Universe timeline. In 1941, Donkey Kong Sr. is born. Mario is also born in 1941, during the events of Yoshi's New Island. Yoshi's Island DS also takes place in 1941, which is when Donkey Kong Sr. makes his first appearance as a baby. Pauline's age is uncertain, but was likely born sometime between 1941 and 1954. This is assumed due to her and Mario's romantic interactions seen in Donkey Kong Arcade, which takes place in 1981. Using the universal rule of half your age plus 7 to determine the culturally acceptable minimum age of a romantic partner, if Mario is 40 years old in 1981, Pauline should be assumed to be between the age of 27 and 40. This would mean that she was born sometime between the year 1941 and 1954. Considering what is known about Mario and Pauline, it's unlikely that she is older than Mario. Donkey Kong Sr.'s son, Donkey Kong Jr. is born in 1982, which is also when his titular game Donkey Kong Jr. takes place. Super Mario Bros. Takes place in 1985, which is when Mario's romantic interest in Princess Peach begins. Donkey Kong Jr. reaches maturity in 1989, and his first depiction of reaching adulthood is in 1992 during the events of Super Mario Kart. Donkey Kong Jr.'s son, Donkey Kong III, was born in 1991, and is shown to have reached maturity by the events of Mario Kart 64, which takes place in 1996. Mario Party 1 takes place in 1998, and every year or so until 2024, Mario and his friends host Mario Party, which is depicted in every entry in the Mario Party series. Each party consists of Mario and his friends competing to see who can acquire the most Power Stars in what seems to be the ritualistic worship of the Power Stars. The Power Stars possess great magical properties, and grant the user various effects such as temporary invulnerability, increased size, and slower aging. It's during this time period that large quantities of Power Stars are available to Mario and his friends. That is why, going forward, Donkey Kong III is able to distribute the Power Stars to his friends and family, which grants them the ability to slow their aging. Mario does the same thing with his friends, as does Wario. Donkey Kong Country 1 takes place shortly after Mario Party 1 in 1999. It is the first time Donkey Kong Sr. is depicted as being elderly, and is now referred to as Cranky Kong. Donkey Kong 64 takes place in 2003, and shortly before the events of the game, Wrinkly Kong, Cranky Kong's wife, passes away due to old age. For whatever reason, she did not use the Power Stars before getting too old to prevent her from passing away. Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2 March of the Minis takes place in 2007, and confirms that Mario and Pauline have been friends since their fling 28 years ago. Super Mario Odyssey takes place in 2017, and shows New Donk City as being the location of Donkey Kong Arcade. Pauline is now the mayor of New Donk City and must have lived there for most of her life in order to be able to do so. Despite her being at least 63 years old at this point, she still looks relatively young. Through her friendship with Mario, who has been attending Mario Party consistently for 19 years at this point, she is able to acquire enough Power Stars to continue to look young and glamorous. Despite her old age, she is able to continue to lead her city and perform as a flashy musician. Pauline actually does attend Mario Party in Super Mario Party Jamboree, which takes place in 2024, which does confirm that she does collect and use Power Stars. Mario Golf Super Rush takes place in 2021, and is Donkey Kong III's first confirmed visit to New Donk City. If there are any questions as to why these games take place on these dates in this order, or how Power Stars can slow aging, the Super Mario Universe timeline should be referred to. The link is in the description. Now that a brief overview of some of the more pertinent information from the Super Mario Universe timeline has been explained, the placement of Donkey Kong Bananza in said timeline can now commence. During the events of the game, Donkey Kong meets up with a teenage girl named Pauline who was taken from her home by a Void Kong who needed her beautiful voice to awaken the fabled Banandium root, a magical artifact with the ability to grant wishes. When Donkey Kong first meets Pauline, neither of them show any sign of having met before. They are trapped in an underground world and are convinced by Elder Kong that the easiest way to return Pauline home is to find the Banandium root, which could grant her wish of being sent home. Later they meet up with Cranky Kong, who refers to the events of Donkey Kong Arcade. They also meet Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong, who recount the events of the Donkey Kong Country trilogy, but do not recognize her either. Several times throughout the story, Pauline mentions her grandmother, stating that her singing always makes her feel better. Once they find the Banandium root, they wish to be taken back to Pauline's home. The Banandium root sends them to New Donk City, which she confirms to be her home. Donkey Kong also immediately recognizes it. Pauline plans to perform at City Hall with her newfound courage of her singing ability, and says that her grandma will be proud to see her perform. The game ends with her singing at New Donk City Hall while Donkey Kong III and her grandma watch. Now that the pertinent events of the game have been explained, its placement in the timeline can now be discussed. The main character of the game is Donkey Kong III, and is most certainly not Donkey Kong Sr. or Donkey Kong Jr. This is confirmed by Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong when they recount the events of Donkey Kong Country, so the game must take place sometime after 1999. When Donkey Kong and Pauline travel to New Donk City, Donkey Kong immediately recognizes it. The only time Donkey Kong III has visited New Donk City in-game was during Mario Golf Super Rush. This indicates that Bananza takes place after Mario Golf Super Rush as well. Due to the assumption that all games take place in order of release unless proven otherwise, Donkey Kong Bananza takes place in 2025 and is the final game to take place in the timeline as of the writing of this script. The only reason why this wouldn't be the case is if teenage Pauline was somehow the same person as adult Pauline, but from an earlier point in the timeline. This obviously couldn't be the case due to Donkey Kong III having interactions with Pauline as an adult, who appeared alongside his grandfather long before he was even born. Bananza also gives information about Pauline's background that strongly implies that she is not the same person as adult Pauline. As stated previously, several times throughout the story, Pauline mentions her grandmother and seems to be very close to her. When she goes to perform at New Donk City Hall, she mentions that her grandmother would be there, implying that she is still alive and lives in New Donk City. As seen in Super Mario Odyssey, adult Pauline lives in New Donk City and is actually the mayor during 2017. She is a very talented vocal artist and is still proven to be alive in 2024, during the events of Super Mario Party Jamboree. If teenage Pauline is a teenager in 2025 during the events of Donkey Kong Bananza, she would have been born around 2012. If the average age of childbirth is assumed to be 30 years of age, 2 generations before 2012 is about 1952. Since teenage Pauline is a white girl with brown hair and blue eyes, it's likely that her grandmother is a white woman with brown hair and blue eyes. Since her name is Pauline, that also increases the chance that her grandmother's name is Pauline due to the possibility of her parents naming them after one of their mothers. Since adult Pauline was likely born sometime around 1950, is proven to still be alive in 2024, is proven to live in New Donk City, is a talented vocal artist, is a white woman with brown hair and blue eyes, and is named Pauline, it is extremely likely that she is teenage Pauline's grandmother. Due to the likelihood of this being the case, the most reasonable assumption to make is that adult Pauline is teenage Pauline's grandmother. Since teenage Pauline makes no mention of her parents, and is extremely close to her grandmother who lives in New Donk City with her, it's likely that she is being raised by her grandmother. Adult Pauline's child, who would go on to be the parent of teenage Pauline, would have been born sometime during the 70s or 80s, assuming the average generational gap of 30 years. Since Mario and Pauline expressed mutual affection toward one another on a few occasions during this time period, does that mean that Mario is teenage Pauline's grandfather? Most likely not, for a few reasons. Firstly, it's never stated in any game or instruction manual that Pauline is Mario's girlfriend at any point in time. The idea that she is Mario's girlfriend comes from a quote during a developer interview and considered supplemental canon. The instruction manual for Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2, March of the Minis, also supports the idea that they have never had a serious relationship. It states that Pauline is Mario's glamorous friend, as opposed to saying that she is his ex-girlfriend or something of that nature. Thirdly, it would be extremely out of character for Mario to have a child out of wedlock, take no responsibility of parenthood, and proceed to run off to chase the hand of a magical princess from a distant land, despite just becoming a new father. Mario's house has never shown any sign of any children living there, even if it was only on an every other weekend basis. Mario is very old and for many, many years has always been an extremely helpful and pure-hearted individual. It could be assumed that there are 3 Paulines, just how it could be assumed that there are 10 Marios, but there is no evidence to support this, and it is more reasonable to assume that the adult Pauline seen in every game is the same person, because that is what is presented in every game she appears in. Most of Mario's other friends haven't aged much since the year 2000, so why would Pauline when she is in the prime of her time? In conclusion, Donkey Kong Bananza is the last game in the timeline as of the writing of this script. Teenage Pauline is adult Pauline's grandmother, and who her grandfather and parents are is unknown. Donkey Kong Bananza does not break the Super Mario Universe timeline, and if anything, strengthens many of the points made about the timeline.